We want to welcome you to the first Legal Coalition's L.O.C Live podcast. And we are launching, as many of you know, and if you don't know, you're going to know in just a moment, our brand new campaign. And I'm sure it's not new to some of you. You may have thought of this phrase. You may have felt some kind of way after November the 5th, November the 6th to July the 4th. And we think it very, very positional, very poignant that we launch our first podcast here, our first L.O.C Live, to talk about our first campaign and what we are putting in the streets. And that is our slogan, our hashtag, our theme, our tagline is that she won. And what we are doing here is just want to inform you, go out and take this message that is fact-based, that is receipt. These are findings that, just didn't come out of nowhere. They came from skilled, expert data scientists and analysts and statisticians. And some of those folks are joining us here today. So just have been in league with them. We have been working with them even before League of Coalition started. And we just have listened to what the experts are saying. We've been fans. We've been cheering from the outside on our posts and our socials about, hey, are you guys hearing this? And over the last month, you guys, I wanted to share that. And I'm sure most of you here have maybe heard that. And it's not just in our heads anymore. It's getting out into the atmosphere. It is out here on these, what we would say, messy Democratic streets, right? All of these protests, y'all, have just been more and more. It's now kind of, we come through this barrier, and because it's coming through, it's now permeating, right? And now we see it begin to saturate into the conversation, into the media sphere, into the social media, because of the work of fantastically talented, dedicated groups like Election Truth Alliance and Smart Elections. It is coming through. And so that's the reason it's more than a conversation. We have to take it outside of these walls in our own situations, our conversations, our media, transfers and socials and all those kinds of things outside. And when we say outside, we are bringing this voice to the protest space, because it is the one voice that has been underrepresented, and it's the one voice that needs to be overrepresented, right? We are bringing that to you, and we believe that the next big protest, the next protest date is July the 4th. And what better way, what better day, really, you guys, and I would say our 250-year history to be reclaiming, restoring, renewing independence, and being in the streets and on the protest front. It just brings it more and more to the level of the election truth that we need to shout from the rooftops. So when we really begin to evolve people into looking at the facts and figures here, that's because people lie, but numbers don't, right? That's the power that we have. The math is mathing. This math is mathing. And so I want to just welcome your comments, welcome your questions. We're going to just maybe fly by the seat a little bit, because we want to have a good time today. We want you to know that you are part of a new community. And we believe that if you're here, you're either, have heard about this, or you want to know more, or you're passionate and you're like, let's get out there. Look, we are here. We want to embrace you where you are. And we know that this is an important voice that has to permeate. We have to bring it to the people. We have to put it in the atmosphere. We're going to bring up one of the influencers, that is Brandy.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, Brandy, how are you?
I'm good.
Here we go.
So one thing that I want to know now that the Dr. Mebane report is live and everyone can access it from the ETA's website and from Newswire is, where is Josh Shapiro? Where is Josh Shapiro and Al Schmidt? And more so, where is Josh Shapiro? Because like, he's the governor of Pennsylvania. This is our state. What are you doing about this? Are you going to address this? Because the Election Truth Alliance also sent you a letter back in April. They sent you a letter in April that has still gone unanswered, where they were offering you a cost-shared way to check the tests. And now Dr. Mebane is saying that there are potentially 225,000 weird tests in Pennsylvania. So where is Josh Shapiro? What is he doing about this? Does he know what's happening? Because aside from the letter that they have sent him, this report that is out there from Dr. Mebane in regards to all of Pennsylvania, they also had the week of action back for Memorial Day where people called, texted, sent emails and letters to Josh Shapiro and Al Schmidt. So where are they? Where are they in this matter? Are they going to address it, or are they just going to let us, the constituents of Pennsylvania, sit here and question them? I've said it before and I will say it again. Dr. Mebane is a leading expert in test forensics, and if he says something weird is happening in Pennsylvania, then I believe him. So we need to get the word out there, and Josh Shapiro needs to respond to the Election Truth Alliance.
Wow. Truth teller. Thank you, Brandy, for coming on. And I just want to give you the stage for a moment and maybe just tell us how you got into the truth, the election truth of it all.
So I stayed up on election night and I was just watching the results come in. And for a while, everything looked like normal. Like it was kind of there were some red states, there were some blue states, but both parties were winning. And then all of a sudden, I fell asleep and I woke up in the morning and it was just all red. And it didn't, none of it made sense, because even around here in Pennsylvania, which is where I'm from, there were far more Kamala. I always say it's is it Kamala? Because I always say it wrong. No matter how hard I try, I say it wrong. But there were so many more signs for her than there were for Donald Trump. And even now, most of the people that I've seen that had Trump signs have taken them down. I don't think a lot of people are supporting it anymore. But it didn't make sense. So I started looking for information myself, and I came across the Election Truth Alliance first, and then I found Smart Elections, and the ETA kind of seemed a little bit more they had more recent information. So I followed what they had put out on Nevada more, and it just, what they had put out made more sense than the results that we had seen on the day after the election. So I was nope, this information has to get out there. And no one was really talking about it for the longest time. And now it's finally out there. People are finally starting to talk about it and look at it, which makes me very happy.
Yeah. And what has been the reaction? Because I mean, I've just been kind of all a little bit on the inside and the outside and kind of riding the line, working with different coalitions. And there's lots of voices that are not really competing. They all matter. But what we here at League of Coalitions and the folks that we're, I like to say coalitioning, I've made that verb with, is that we believe that there's a voice here that it's been underrepresented, that holds a big bunch of truth, has some numbers and statistics that are attached to, that can be verified and receipted, if you will, that there's something that needs to be out in the protest space, that is being said all and saturating, really, I believe now, social media. It's unavoidable, it's undeniable. So what do you think might be the best next step? I mean, would it be from the social media point, what should we be saying on our socials about this?
Well, I think the she won thing is great, because that's what I get a lot in my comment sections on TikTok is she won, we know that, what do we do next? So I think the biggest thing is there needs to be here's what you guys can do. I tell people to call their governors and their secretaries of state, because as far as I know, those are the people that would have power. But a lot of it is people want to know what they can do to help, because they're not sure, because this is kind of nothing like this has ever come up before, and
Right.
they don't know what to do or where to go to help people that are looking into it and trying to do something.
Yeah, I think that it's time to be loud, right? It's time, what other time, what better time to be loud, to be, I would say, explosive and ignited about this truth. We are, because it's truth. I mean, how else can we say that these are numbers and facts?
The data
And
doesn't lie.
right, you're right. And there's a lot of mis and dis we know that we fight against every day. and it's been a narrative like, we could look like the other side, which, come on. The difference, I believe, Brandy, from us and the folks or what started this whole denial, stop the steal, 5 years ago, was that came from the top down, right? It came from like one man or a couple of folks surrounding him that said, and started to plant that seed of doubt. And then it fell down. It was almost like a command, or like, I'll follow you to the Capitol. Those kinds of just untoward, dangerous kinds of commands. And so I think that this time the difference is it's coming from the bottom up. It's bubbling up here from the social media space, from all of the places, from the people, and because you're seeing it, and we want to voice it. So go ahead.
No, it's like bottom up. Like, this isn't coming from, like, Kamala Harris did not call for like the recount, and even now, like, it's hard to get anyone to listen, but this is all like by the people, for the people. Like, the people are the ones that are like raising their voices about this and trying to bring attention to it. Like, we still haven't heard anything, as far as I know, in Pennsylvania from Josh Shapiro and like other governors in other states. Like, no one is responding to this, which is truly mind-blowing, because I'm like, I can't foresee at this point that none of you have caught wind of any of this.
Right. And and we realize that folks may be at different points along the journey. And if this had been said, 5 months ago, when maybe we were feeling it, but we weren't seeing it, now we're seeing it, right? We're seeing it and we're hearing it, and it's getting through in everyday conversation and things that we see on YouTube conversations or news that comes more from the organic, from the people part of the electorate and those kinds of things.
So you guys can follow me on TikTok. My account name is Brandy 202008, and I post mostly about like stuff from the Election Truth Alliance and from Smart Elections. Hopefully I will have more information to post for you guys about the League of Coalitions though soon.
Ellie, you there? She may not hear me.
Hey, can you hear me?
Hey. Yes, we can.
Can you hear me or no?
We can.
Hey. I know everybody's anxious and they want to see Nathan's work, so I'm going to be real quick. Hello, everyone. My name is Natalie, and he already introduced me. I'm one of the co-founders of L.O.C. We are very excited to get this out there. I know it's been a rough 6 months. I'm gonna just say it's been for me. It's a process, and we've been waiting for Congress to do something. They haven't. Congress hasn't done anything. They left us hanging. So this is about the people's movement, and League of Coalitions is all about. That's what it is: getting a League of Coalitions together to combat this. We're going to need multiple, but the 4 a.m. club, the Blue Lulus, everybody, we all felt it that night / morning. We're not crazy. We're not, as Raw Cognizance says on TikTok. We all felt it, and we knew something was off, and that was without having the data. We have the data. And we cannot continue down this path. We have to get in front of it and say it out loud. We just have to, because no one else is saying it. Everyone's scared. They're more concerned about decorum versus democracy. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to fight back, and we should have more people run for office, more progressive Democrats. That's what we need to do. We need to reform the party or create another party. We got to do something. That's all I got.
Yeah. And we're going to be talking about that on the L.O.C Live channel here with our L.O.C Live podcast that will be coming up. And if you guys wouldn't mind doing all the stuff and liking and sharing and commenting, that's awesome for our first round with the algorithm. So thank you so much, Natalie, for all of the hard work that you've done here and beyond, and that we're in it together is everything. So thank you, one of our co-founders. Natalie. So what we want to bring you now is what we believe is one of the primary voices, not only in this country, but I think the voice, the resounding facts and information that cannot be denied, statistical data, scientific information that this next guest is going to share. He is the founder of Election Truth Alliance. You can visit them at electiontruthalliance.org. And we've been fans trying to help this organization out, getting their information, their truth out about the election. And so if you would help me welcome Mr. Nathan Taylor, the founder of Election Truth Alliance.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
Yes.
I will highlight, technically speaking, I am one of 3 co-founders,
Right.
but still, been here from the beginning. A little bit about me and the organization, right? Like right after the election, we got together with Jive and Lily, 2 amazing co-founders for this organization. And we said, let's investigate our elections. Let's make sure they're free and fair and transparent. And so we created a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization called the Election Truth Alliance. There are some caveats. Sadly, or, because of the work we do, we have to be nonpartisan. We are not allowed to endorse candidates. We're not allowed to donate to candidates, but we are educational in nature. So we can talk about the facts. We can talk about the truth. We can talk about the data. And that's what I'm here to hopefully do today. Is I've got all kinds of things to go over, but you know me, I have a very simple PowerPoint. I love questions, and I do have some things that we haven't published yet that I can briefly talk about. I think that relates to kind of why everyone is here. So any questions, any concerns, any thoughts as we kind of, go into things, Josh?
Nathan, I'm just going to let you roll because
All right.
so naturally, because it's really part of who you are. So we're just going to sit and trust and listen because you're the authority.
Well, I appreciate that. We will actually highlight someone who has far more credibility and experience than I do in looking at election fraud. That is Dr. Walter Mebane. We'll show some of his work. When you guys want facts and credible evidence, I would argue there's no one better in the U.S. alone. So me and my iconic PowerPoints, let's see if we can throw this one up on the screen here. You'll probably have to do it for me.
Okay.
Very simple. I'm going to keep this big picture for you guys. Josh, jump in as you have questions or you want clarification or we see anything in the chat.
Sure.
Here's the overview, right? You may have seen this before, but let's talk about election night. Let's talk about the beginning. November 5th, right at the start, and everyone's talking about, what did it feel like? What was the momentum? Well, although there was significant momentum going into this election night, we will highlight on election night, there were over 200 bomb threats. This has not been seen before. And this is what kind of prompted the Election Truth Alliance to start diving deeper. Is we highlight not only was there 200 bomb threats, but they were focused around more populated counties, more liberal, more Democrat-based counties. And this raised some flags. And then we also are going to look at, how the swing states all shifted one way and some of the equipment used that you may not be fully aware of. And then we'll talk about a little bit of other things, but we'll jump into a little bit of the hard facts for you. Pennsylvania alone had, I think, over 30 plus bomb threats on election night. Some of the other places that we don't talk about a lot is California, Arizona, and Minnesota. What was important here is those bomb threats did disrupt these counties, but they pretty much indicated a larger organized attempt to mess with our elections. And that is the first step you would need to pull off some pretty dangerous things, to threaten our elections and our democracy. So this is what's important, is it's showing, although these were attributed to Russian email domains, what's important is we're seeing that bomb threats were targeted all across the US. And this is hard. This is unlikely for one person to do. This is an organized effort. And this raised red flags for what would ultimately become a deeper dive into our elections, into the systems we use, into the audits that are conducted, and states claim are, safeguarding our elections, but we have concerns. And then, of course, we go into the machines. I do have some data we'll show here in a moment, but this is what's important is as people ask us this question, they say, how could you impact an election? Every state, we got 50 states. We pretty much got 50 elections in a trench coat. I'll coin that one. That one I'll put on a shirt. But 50 elections in a trench coat. That is the US for you. And here's the thing. Every state runs their own elections. They're responsible for how they do it. But 70% of the US uses the same major brands. And we're focused on the machines that count the votes. There are machines that you can vote on, yes. But a majority of the time, we're looking at the machines that count the vote. So even if you go, let's say Pennsylvania, and you go on election day or you go on early voting and you fill out a physical ballot and it gets submitted, it still gets counted by a machine. It gets counted by a vote counting computer. And if you're not familiar, a certain individual on inauguration night talked about how well a certain billionaire knows those vote counting computers in Pennsylvania. So this is what's important is if you were to compromise 70% of the US's voting infrastructure, two major brands, let's say you get the top three and you're able to compromise them in some way, put malware on them or whatever it is, you could then have an opportunity to change the outcome of a presidential election. You could also potentially mess with the state level elections as well. And so if you're not familiar with me and my background is in cybersecurity. I was a 25 Bravo computer tech specialist in the Army Reserves. Got my degree in network security and information systems. Became a signal officer in the Army Guard. So I know a little bit about computers, and it is concerning to me how these systems are managed. We've looked into these major brands. Things are starting to come out now. If you've paid attention to some of the more political content creators and articles and investigative journalists, they talk about these machines now, and we're starting to find. And Free Speech for People, for example, in 2024 came out with a letter saying, hey, these major brands that we use, that we trust to safeguard our elections, aren't actually as secure as we've been told they are. Some of them could be compromised. Some of them could be connected to the internet, these tabulation machines. So this is really important. These warrant further investigation. And as we're going to talk about with the data here, we have statistical evidence of what could be election fraud. It's the same type of statistical evidence seen in European elections that they did investigate back in 2019 in Bolivia and other places. So statistical evidence of election fraud is worthwhile, and it does warrant investigation. And that's when you get into actually finding, did something happen or not? So we'll jump into the data, the abnormalities. So I've got 3 states highlighted here for you. Which ones are these, Josh? At a glance, which ones do these look like? I'll put you on the spot.
It's Nevada.
Okay.
Yep.
The top is Nevada. That's Washoe and Clark County, 2 of the largest counties in Nevada. What about these other 2 here?
The North Carolina and Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Right.
North Carolina on the left, and then Pennsylvania on the bottom right. So we have published our findings for Clark County, Nevada, and for those 3 counties, Philadelphia, Erie, and Allegheny County, Pennsylvania. We have yet to publish the full North Carolina report, but we've made some published, we've done some videos. I went on Roland Martin earlier a couple days ago, and I talked about our findings, but we're going to actually talk about it here as well. It is a little cut off in this PowerPoint, but all we're highlighting is, for example, in North Carolina, we are seeing the same abnormalities as we're seeing across the swing states. We are seeing a huge difference in the amount of votes at the presidential level to the amount of votes at the senator or down ballot races. And this is unique to this election, generally speaking. Past elections, normally there's not a huge difference. Most of the time, the presidential race on both parties gets around 1% to 2% more votes than their senators or their governors or whatever. In this case, for this election, we are seeing, for example, candidate Harris was always coming in negative across entire states from county to county, and it's consistent. And then we see a significant overperformance for Trump. And we do have some visuals to show that, but this is the reason why that is important. If you were to compromise the tabulation machines, if you were to start changing or deleting votes for one candidate at the presidential level, that would cause a noticeable drop-off when comparing the down ballot races. If you were deleting votes for the president, it would mean the senator is now getting more votes. And we're seeing that, and we'll show you what that looks like. We did quantify it a little bit here for you. So in North Carolina alone, when looking at the presidential race to the superintendent race, we are seeing that Harris got, across the entire state, 122,000 fewer votes than their superintendent for the Democratic Party. On the other hand, Trump received 1,901 or 191,000 more votes. And we'll visualize this for you, and we'll show you why this is so weird. Any questions here? No? All right. Before I show you 2024, let's have a bit of a baseline. As we get into the data, I know this gets a little confusing. I'll keep this big picture for you, but this is 2016. This is North Carolina in 2016. And what's important is, how do you read this graph? So what this graph shows is all the counties are at the bottom axis. And so there is a red, technically there's an orange and a blue line per county. And all it's showing is if that line is above the 0 mark, they got more votes than, in this case, the superintendent. If it's below that line, they got less votes. So we're looking at the presidential race. And so, Josh, do you see here? What does this look like? It looks like what? Both candidates, where were both candidates generally sitting when looking at them versus their superintendent in 2016 for North Carolina? Are they above or below the graph here, the lines?
Well, they're not. Hardly anything's below the line.
Hardly anything is negative, right?
Yeah.
So as we said, when we look at past elections and we look at non-swing states, on average, the presidential race gets around 1 to 2% more votes than the down ballot races. But in this case, right, 2016, we see that both at the time Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were both sitting pretty heavily 1 to 2% more votes than the superintendents for both parties. This is what we say looks more normal. This is more human voting behavior. It's not perfectly in lockstep. It's a little chaotic, but we see that both of them are doing pretty well. Now I'm going to show you 2024. And we're going to see, as we said, if 2016 is normal, right? If this is what normal human voting behavior looks like, let's look at 2024. And so this is North Carolina. This is 2024. And so as we said, 0% is the amount of votes the superintendent got for both parties.
Yeah.
If you got more than the superintendent, you're above the line. If you got less than the superintendent, you're below the line. And this is hard data. We pulled this data from the entire state, county by county. And what we're seeing here is, although this is North Carolina, we are seeing the same trends in Arizona, in Pennsylvania, and we'll show you that, in some of these other swing states as well. And so what's important here is we are seeing Harris is consistently, almost algorithmically underperforming the superintendent across the entire state. The problem with this is not reflective of human voting behavior. It's unlikely everyone would vote in such a way. You would expect to see a more chaotic pattern. And as we like to highlight, if there was a compromise of the tabulation machines and you were deleting votes for one candidate or changing them or whatever it is, it would cause this effect. It would cause that candidate whose votes have been impacted to underperform other down ballot races. So that's the overview on this. We did the same thing for Pennsylvania. And here's what's important about Pennsylvania. For 2024, we see that their mail-in looks more like a normal voting behavior. We see that mail-in looks more normal. Both candidates are somewhere on the positive side, but it's not so consistent. It's very random. But election day for Pennsylvania in the 2024 presidential election, the same election day where there was over 200 plus bomb threats, 30 plus bomb threats in Pennsylvania, we are seeing significant underperformance for Harris. We are seeing that same almost machine-like pattern that could be caused by vote manipulation. So we're going to talk a little bit about the numbers. We're going to give you the hard numbers now. And I only have a few more slides. I know I could do this I could spend 30 minutes on one slide, but we have hard numbers for you. And these numbers are thanks to the hard work of Dr. Walter Mebane. So I'm going to give you a little bit of his background, and then I'm going to tell you what he's told us and what he shared to the public and where our analysis matches his. So he is, in my opinion, one of the leading U.S. election fraud experts in not only the country, but in the world. There's only a handful. There's a top 5, and he is easily in the top 5 alone. And so for his background, he is a renowned expert in election forensics and statistics focused around election fraud. He works currently at, I believe, the Department of Statistics and Political Science in the University of Michigan. He has a PhD. He's made his own model for detecting election fraud. And what is important, and this isn't talked about enough, is USAID actually gave him a grant to work with him and a team to make election fraud toolkits. He's been paid by the government to look at election fraud. It doesn't get better than this. So he's made multiple papers. He has put out a lot of public statements. And so he actually ran the same data that we've made public for Pennsylvania and North Carolina. And so we're going to show you his findings. And so here's his findings. We're going to start with North Carolina first. This has not been published yet. We've talked about it. Our report isn't out yet, but we spoke with Dr. Walter Mebane. He ran all of the data for North Carolina, precinct by precinct. And his findings estimated, based on his model, up to 207,000 anomalous votes in North Carolina. He does quantify this a bit by saying around 102,000 are high confidence of being manipulated votes, but that's his range, is up to 207,000. And so what's important here is, I believe the North Carolina margin of victory at the presidential level is close to 184,000 votes. So if that upper range is correct and those votes were manipulated, that would be enough to change the outcome of North Carolina at the presidential level. And so we do have as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just North Carolina has no bearing on the entire election, right? But go ahead, yeah.
Just North Carolina, but and although my PowerPoint here is a little wonky, we also published the same concerns for Pennsylvania. Yes. And so the margin of victory in Pennsylvania was around 120,000 votes for Trump. His findings upwards of 200,000, 210,000. And it does match our analysis as well. We do a different type of analysis, but we are finding similar concerns. But he is a credible source. Yes. So his analysis is showing if the higher end of vote anomalies is caused by manipulation, it would be enough to change the outcome of North Carolina. It would be enough to change the outcome of Pennsylvania. And so we've applied the same techniques to other places as well, but we're going to just quickly and visually show you what some of this manipulation looks like. I will highlight this. We've run the numbers for other swing states as well. And so if the same trends seen in Pennsylvania and North Carolina, where higher turnout is benefiting one candidate, where that drop-off vote is noticeable, if that is caused by vote manipulation, we are seeing that not only in North Carolina and Pennsylvania would it be enough to change the outcome, but it would also be enough to change the outcome in Wisconsin. It would be enough to change the outcome in Arizona, and it would be enough to change the outcome in Nevada as well. And all of those states together, those 5 states would be enough to change the outcome of the presidential race as a whole. And, candidate Harris would, I think, get around 288 electoral votes, if just those 5 states. We have found similar concerns in other states, even non-swing states.
Yeah.
But we'll show you a little bit of what that looks like. So here's a quick heat map. We'll make this short. We'll give me about 2 minutes or so. But this is based off the work of Peter Klimek, another notable election fraud expert, one of the best. And he has multiple papers. And he's looked at Russian elections. He's modeled Russian elections and European elections. And he's saying, hey, if a free and fair election looks more like a circle of votes, which is what we're seeing on the right here, then how do our elections actually compare? And so we see if a fair election in Russia in 2011 would be more of a circle, we're seeing that up and to the right comment trail. And that's what's important here is if you were manipulating votes, stuffing votes or deleting votes for one candidate, it's going to cause that shape, that up and to the right. And that's bad. We don't want to see that. A free and fair election should look more like a circle, based off the work of Peter Klimek. And he's an Austrian physicist, by the way. He's renowned for election forensics. He's made his own statistic tools as well. And so we've applied his work to the United States for the 2024 election. And in this case, we're looking at Ohio. They have a nonpartisan state board race. And that is, I believe, State Board District 5. And here's that race for you. And so we're using this and the next one as a baseline. So does this look like a bit more like a circle to you? Right? Yeah, this is more of a circle. And so if this is what we're doing here is we're showing this is a baseline. In the US, if our elections can look like this, and based off the work of Peter Klimek, this is what a fair and free election looks like. We'll show you one more, and then we'll actually look at what our elections look like as a whole. And so here's your other one. Here's Erie County, Pennsylvania. It's one of the 3 counties we highlighted. This is their mail-in voting. Remember, I said mail-in for Pennsylvania looks far more normal. So here's their mail-in. Here's that more circular distribution of votes. This is more normal. This is what a free and fair election should look like. All right. Now we're going to jump into the fun part. Now we're going to look at actual. So this is election day. This is Erie County. This is election day. This is Pennsylvania. We're seeing that up and to the right. I will highlight that if this is caused by vote manipulation, if this is caused by changing votes to benefit one candidate or deleting votes or stuffing votes, whatever could be causing this, in this case, this would be potentially stuffing and or deletion. This isn't just a little bit of manipulation. This is a significant shift on the way the votes should look. And so even in Russia in 2011, 2012, they had that up and to the right comment trail, just a little bit of vote manipulation. We are seeing a majority of the precincts, and that's what this is composed of, this is Erie County, and all of the precincts make up this map. So we're seeing a majority of the precincts are potentially being shifted. Turnout is increasing. In places where more people showed up to vote or where more votes were cast, we are seeing it's benefiting Trump. And we're seeing this in Erie County, in Allegheny County, in Philadelphia, and across the swing states as a whole. And that is what we're raising, and we did the numbers for on what could be caused by vote manipulation. And so here's another Pennsylvania. Here's the state as a whole, and we're just showing it's not as aggressive in this case, but we do still see a noticeable shift in votes changing. And then I'll show you North Carolina. This is a county in North Carolina. This is Mecklenburg, Charlotte, the city of Charlotte. And same pattern as you saw in Erie County. And then here's North Carolina as a whole. So just to kind of visualize some of the concerns, North Carolina as a whole, we're not, as I said, we're not just seeing that comet trail. We are seeing a comet. Majority of precincts, and in this case, majority of precincts, majority of counties, benefiting one candidate where turnout had increased. So that kind of summarizes our main concerns.
Yeah.
I will highlight there are other things we can talk about, and I'll summarize again. Right? Hopefully, you can't hear the dogs barking in the background too loud. But so as we said, the work of Dr. Walter Mebane, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, enough to potentially change the outcome of those states at the presidential level. And then based off of additional analysis in our work, we're seeing the same concerns in Wisconsin, in Arizona, and Nevada. And if those are caused by vote manipulation, that would change the outcome of the presidential race as a whole, enough to shift the electoral college votes in favor of candidate Harris in this case for the 2024 presidential election.
Wow. I mean, I just, first of all, though, they remind me of fireworks on those with the July the 4th, those
rockets. Yeah.
And thank you, Nathan. It is the last day of Pride Month, so they are pretty colorful. So thank you for the rainbow. But seriously, and we got some questions here. I just want to ask one really quick question with what we're doing with what we're bringing out to the street level. What would a dream scenario be for Election Truth Alliance to be in the public space? What would that look like for Election Truth to get the truth, their data, their nonpartisan facts out? What does that look like to you guys?
Well, I would say when it comes to next steps and just outreach, we have merch now up on our website, merch at electiontruthealliance.org. We have some awesome shirts that our volunteers have made. We have amazing volunteers. And so we have some really cool shirts and hoodies and hats and mugs. And so we've made them. I pretty much said this when we developed our merch and we put it up on the store. I said, hey, let's make it as cheap as possible because I would more than happily take a loss so that people can wear it and just kind of represent the facts and the data. So I would say I'd love to see people, if able, wearing and kind of helping broadcast the message there. And then, of course, I want to continue to go and talk about this. I want more data to talk about. But then I also want to be able to sit down with the secretaries of state and say, hey, here's the facts. Here's the numbers. And we can show you where to look. We need audits. We need investigations. And that's been our push is we've been trying to get the state governments to come to the table and sit down. We've had some mixed results so far. And what sucks is, for example, it's probably going to take some direct action. And we've been building up for that. Example is North Carolina with, New York in this case, Rockland County, if you're familiar. They dropped a lawsuit and, they had we actually did provide them a little bit of statistical analysis before they filed that lawsuit showing, some of the same concerns with turnout, but, they're highlighting the same things we are. There's that there's a normal drop off, right? Harris is getting way less votes than the senators in some of these places. And then they're also talking about third party voters that just their votes don't show up. And so it's things like that. If you were to have compromised the tabulation machines used in New York, machines used all across the US, in California, then a side effect would be what we've been highlighting, what Smart Elections has been highlighting, a noticeable drop-off, missing votes, and some other indicators such as, the actual statistical analysis, like Dr. Walter Medbin has highlighted, where turnout is just, for some reason, when more people voted, one candidate seems to get a lot more of those votes, and that's just not normal.
No. And I wanted to also add too, just with there's a toolkit on the resources under the resources tab on electiontruthealliance.org, you guys, that will walk you through who to contact, what to put the pressure on your elected election officials, your secretaries of state. Those are the people that can push the buttons and make these audits happen. And there's a difference between recount and audit. We need to be saying audit because the recount, every state has have different rules about it, and all of those deadlines have passed for presidential.
Yeah, we have that toolkit. We're going to keep building that toolkit out to kind of outreach. We had a whole week of focused outreach to the governor and the secretary of state of Pennsylvania. So we're going to kind of do more of those in the future. Yeah. I would say, as we said, since we're nonpartisan, but our focus as a nonprofit and a nonpartisan organization is educational in nature. So we can go talk about this. We can go make this public. We can go put up billboards, but we can't, be more direct than that, right? That's not us, but that's where, other people are able to talk about these things. And we are happy to give you the data. We're happy to give you everything you need to make an informed decision. And I think what's important here is a lot of the pushback we've gotten from some of the people in positions of authority is, one, if they do believe us, what can they do, right? They're like, everyone says the concern is if our elections are not free and fair, a lot of people kind of lose hope. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think what matters here is this isn't about politics, right? This isn't about party. This isn't about left or right or blue or red. This is about American people being represented, having their voices heard. And what's important is a government gets its power from the consent of the governed. And so if there is manipulation in our elections, if those who govern us are not granted that power by the consent of the governed, we have a serious problem. And so, as we said, and what we're going to do is we're going to keep pushing. We're going to get louder. We're going to put out more data. And, I'm not going anywhere. This is something that at this point, like, I don't know what is more important than making sure our elections are correct and that people's getting their votes and that those votes are being counted correctly.
Yeah. Louder. Look, and we'll you guys get louder and we will carry it to the next level. We have to, outside of just online or just with interviews like this, it has to be outside. We've got some great questions. We got a few minutes left.
Yeah, questions.
That's okay. Christine is going to kind of, I guess, flash them up on the screen for us.
Yeah, and I saw a question that was asking a few things.
Sure.
I do want to highlight, though, if all else fails, there are a few states that we're going to publish soon that I feel like are some of the best opportunities to get audits, to get investigations. They are some of the bluer states. They are states that, even though in this case, candidate Harris won, we're still finding significant evidence of manipulation. And what's funny is Minnesota is on that list. And so we did do an analysis of Minnesota. We did find 88,000 or so potentially anomalous manipulated votes across the state. And here's what's important. And people ask this question. This is why I'm highlighting that. Is they said, what about those Senate races? What about those down ballot races? Some of these don't add up. And we have found in Minnesota, for example, or Pennsylvania, or some of these other places, that although there is a noticeable drop off for the presidential race, we're still finding manipulation, potential manipulation at the Senate levels. We found somewhere closer to 70,000 anomalous votes for the Senate in Minnesota. So I think that's important, that as we dive deeper, the presidential race is important. But if there's down ballot races that are being impacted, and if they're actually being changed because of the manipulation, that is very important as well. And that's something we're going to fight and we're going to highlight as we go forward.
Great. I'm going to add Christine here that can actually give us the questions verbatim that she's been collecting. Christine.
May have to highlight them here.
Christine, you'll have to unmute it, I think. Hold on just a second. Let me get you. Hold on. Wrong person. How bad. Here we go. Christine. There we go. Christine, you there?
There we go, everybody. I am not on camera. There's a bunch of questions for Nathan. Some of them are similar, so I'm just going to put them up here, like one of them, and then summarize. So you want to start with hard questions, Nathan? Or
I love hard questions.
Okay. Let's see here. I just saw a hard one. Let's see.
I'm already seeing some where people are asking us how, machine-wise. And I think, as we highlighted, although there are voting machines all across the U.S., depending on where you are at and what they use, we're looking more or less the tabulation machines. And as we said, there are some major tabulation brands. There's 2 or 3 top brands used all across the U.S. A lot of vulnerabilities, as highlighted by Free Speech for People. They had a group of cybersecurity experts and computer tech people who were saying, hey, there are compromises of the machines. The images could have got public. Who knows? And I will highlight that Smart Elections has actually made some public statements, and they put up on their website and their Substacks a little bit about a few organizations that do audits of the machines that we use. So, for example, they highlighted ProVNV. And I think what's important here is we don't know, truly, right? We don't know, and we can't truly know until we get audits, until we get investigations. But there seems to be a lot of opportunities where, if you could have compromised the machines, if they are connected with cellular modems or whatever, that would allow you to pull this off. Right. And what's important is we are highlighting, we have the statistical evidence to show that it could have happened. And so if we go and we get our audits, we'll show that it did happen. And then we can truly sit down and investigate how exactly it did happen. But I think in this case, it's easier to go and find, did it happen or not? And then we can really, do the forensic analysis that would be required. Questions?
Okay, I'm going to give you an easy one here. Unfortunately, the questions are coming up, and you guys aren't shrinking with the questions, so it goes over Nathan a little, so I'm going to take it off after a moment. But besides swing states, are there any anomalies in other states, and how were those counted?
Yep, I think I talked about this a little bit. We are seeing, although at least 6 out of the 7 swing states are showing the same anomalies at different levels, we're seeing non-swing states such as California, such as Texas, such as Minnesota, that are the same problems, same trends. And I think that's what's important is they do use the same machine brands. They use the same major tabulation brands. So it's no. One that, oh, sorry. Well, I'll say this, right? The last thing with this is people ask us, you need to win. You need to win the swing states, yes. And so we see a huge impact on the swing states. But we are seeing at this point, and this is the concern, is almost anywhere the machines were used, there could be manipulation, and that's scary.
Yeah.
And as we dive deeper, that's something we're gonna kind of highlight. All right, next question. Sorry.
It's okay. By the way, I'm just gonna throw this in just to embarrass Nathan for a minute, but because he always thinks we're just giving him compliments.
I have been told I sound like Pete. What's Pete's last name? Pete. I can't pronounce it.
Buttigieg?
Yes.
Yeah, you do. You do.
Voiceover 2.0. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay,
I just need to grow a really nice beard, and then I'll be there.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll never know.
It's that. Go ahead.
So I'm just highlighting this one because it's similar to what you just talked about, but I think that because this leads into several other questions. People, I think, are getting a little confused by the difference between voting machine, tabulation machine, and how those are separate and the difference between them. I have a bunch of questions about the difference between the machine types.
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. We have found, there's been, as you said, situations where you would think there are backups, right? There are additional processes, there are audits, there are ways to catch this. What's concerning here is, as we have looked at North Carolina, as I said, I'm not as familiar as what the individual is that highlighted. There's a specific way that county does it, but I will highlight that we found that although there are processes to do these audits or processes to verify the machines or do these double checks, we're now starting to find some of these counties may not be as, well, they may tell us that they do things a certain way, but then as we dive deeper, we're finding cracks. We're finding, for example, there's a county in Pennsylvania that said they audited or they certified all of their machines, and they tested them. And then now we're finding out during records requests that they actually lied about it. And they didn't actually certify the machines that they said they did. So I will highlight, as I said before, there may be places that have done certain things, and I would love to look at how they did it, how they documented it, but the data doesn't lie. And if the data is saying that there's a problem in some of these places, there are anomalies that are potentially caused by manipulation, at the end of the day, a new audit would show, did this happen, did this not? And that we can trust more than, a lot of other things.
So here's another series of questions. Just wait a second to start answering because there's a couple of them that are connected and I just wanted to put them up real quickly.
Yeah.
So this one's asking about how do we get the information into the courts? Another's asking, would the Supreme Court review this information? And then are you able to decertify the current administration? And I'm pretty sure you know all the answers to those. So.
Yeah, we get these a lot. I'll answer. So where do we go from here, right? How can you get this in the court of law? Well, what we're looking at doing is starting at the county and state level, looking at, for example, Pennsylvania is a focus we're looking at now, where not only do we have statistical analysis, but we're hunting for that extra bit, like what they have in New York for smart elections, for Rockland County, where they got sworn affidavits from voters saying, hey, I voted for a third party candidate. It doesn't show up. We need proof like that. So that's what is the struggle is, as you said, no one's done this before. No one's won a court case off of statistical analysis alone. And so what we're looking at doing is we're looking at trying to progress legally with the best evidence and analysis we can with proof of malpractice or wrongdoing. And that's hard to find. We are finding things. It's slow. And then where do we go, right? Let's say we get our day in court in Pennsylvania. We get our recount. We get our audits. We find that the numbers don't add up. And here's something just recent. If you're watching what's happening in Poland with their election, their presidential election, I will highlight that they found potential vote manipulation in Poland. They did recounts. They did audits of 10, 12 different polling locations, and they found that the results of those locations actually flipped after doing those recounts. And now we're looking into what Poland uses for their systems, and it seems like they may be using one of the major brands that we use in the US as well. And I will highlight that the party, the presidential candidate in Poland that was benefiting from the potential election fraud may or may not have been a more pro-Russian, right-leaning party in this case. But to go back to the question, let's say we prove there was election fraud, that there was manipulation by the machines. Next steps would be a larger level class action lawsuit. It would be big. It would span multiple states. It would probably go to the Supreme Court. There's multiple ways we can do it. But what's important is we want to show in the court of law, did this happen? How did it happen? And we want to protect the midterms. We want to protect the next presidential election. And while we're doing that, we will fight that larger level battle. I will say there are civil rights organizations. There are all kinds of amazing organizations that we know would be happy to jump into a larger effort once it gets to that point. But it's kind of falling to Smart Elections, to us, to other amazing volunteers and people to dig deeper now to get this evidence and then get this proof, and then it will become, hopefully a bigger thing. Can you decertify an election? There has been examples of decertifying elections in the past in the US. Never at this level, never at the scale that this would come to. This would be unprecedented. That wasn't a pun. This would be unique, and it would be a first. But I will highlight this. Just because something is unique, just because something is hard, just because it would be a first and no one's done it before doesn't mean it's impossible, and it doesn't mean you can't try. And so I'm happy to try because I think it's worthwhile.
I have a couple more questions for you because I know we're probably running out of time. But just before we do that, I'd like to tell everybody one of the ways you can help is to donate to the ETA and to the L.O.C. Big part of the efforts of the ETA is to get court cases, which require lawyers. Lawyers are very expensive. Everybody at the ETA is a volunteer. So your dollars go to those things. And then the L.O.C., of course, is getting its footing and off the ground. So it needs those kind of donations to get started. So I just wanted to say it because I know both of you don't really like to do that. So I'm doing it for you. So, so yeah, you guys, they need donations. So there's two more questions. One, just this is just general. I don't think you're going to have an answer because you would have to say political comment. So I'm not asking you to do that, Nathan. But do you have any comments about like Dr. Mebane and his UN work, his USAID work?
Could you, let's see here. So
he did the USAID toolkit for auditing elections, and he worked in different countries overseas. And so I'm just using this as an opportunity. I know you can't talk about why the government took that agency out.
So Dr. Walter Mebane, as I said, he's been held up by the U.S. alone for a lot of his work. He's been kind of the go-to guy when elections happen in European elections, and they'll actually kind of use his analysis. They'll ask him to run things, and they'll use that as a stepping point of, hey, do we think there was anything weird that happened? So I find it very interesting that there's only one other time he's applied his election model to the U.S., and in that case, it was the 2020 presidential election. I don't know if he applied his entire model. He did some other lower level analysis. And here's what's important is I read that report, and this is what he said. And the verbiage of what he said is important. The way his model works, by the way, is he runs the analysis on the data for whatever candidate is winning in this case. And so he runs one candidate at a time, generally speaking. And so what's important is he did look at the 2020 presidential election. He found no significant evidence of election fraud benefiting the winning candidate of the 2020 presidential election. What's important here is in that case, that would be President Biden. So I just want to say then that if he's held up as a standard for election fraud detection, his work is credible. His findings are credible. And as we've highlighted, we're going to keep highlighting his findings as we go forward, and hopefully he'll be able to look at other states as well. And he made a toolkit for USAID. They put it up on their website. He had a website toolkit for detecting election fraud. That's no longer on the website. There is no longer a website for that. So I think that's very interesting, the way that kind of got removed with USAID being in the current state it is today.
Okay, I have two more questions for you. One short, one maybe a little longer. Which do you want first, Nathan? Short or long?
We'll do the short one. We'll do the long one, and I think we'll wrap up then, unless you need anything else from me.
No, I don't think I have any more questions, or I stopped looking just a couple minutes ago, but I did it all the way up to about 5 minutes ago. Okay, I'll give you the short one here. Reached and seen are probably two different things in this question.
Okay, I see this. So it's saying, hey, have we been able to actually reach anyone in Congress, right? Anyone, any sitting representatives, Bernie, AOC. I will say, I personally haven't spoken to anyone at those levels. Being a nonpartisan and nonprofit, it makes it a little weirder for us to engage with people directly. I've not, but I can say that I have it on good authority that our work and our data has made it onto the desks of some people sitting in Congress right now, of some governors, of some secretaries of state. So we haven't, as I said, although I'm pretty confident they've seen it, or at least they know about us and the work we're doing in the ETA, have we got a positive response, right? Have we gotten people willing to, reach out, to connect, and to speak up? No, not yet. We've not had really any public figures in the U.S. kind of say, hey, this is a real thing. I think we're getting there. I think it's becoming more approachable, but also you have to understand the last 4 years when it comes to election integrity has been focused around combating, any concerns about our elections. So it's very difficult for people to do a 180 and say, hey, although we said our elections are free and fair for 4 years, we're wrong. That's going to be a hard sell for a lot of people. So as we said, what we do, very simple, is we give people the data, the facts. We keep it, it's not about party. It's not about politics. It's about, figuring out what is true, investigating it. And then, once you have the data and the evidence, it becomes far more addressable, I think is really what it is, it goes out of the realm of potential conspiracy and it becomes real. And then they can hopefully, use it to make good decisions about protecting our democracy going forward.
Okay, and then the last one is like a combination question, but it's multiple questions of this nature. So I'm not going to put it on the screen. I'm just going to ask it. What are your thoughts on why in the early days, like when Spoonermore was calling this out, he called out tabulators, I think, the first day after the election, and Harris was sent the cybersecurity letters, and so was Josh Shapiro. Why it was so hard back then for people to take action or to move forward with that kind of information? People ask that question a lot.
So Stephen Spoonermore, notable election fraud. I would say he's well known for some of the work he's done back in 2004 in Ohio, I believe, where he actually kind of was a whistleblower for potential election fraud in Ohio in 2004. As you said, after the election, he wrote a duty to warn letter talking about his concerns of a potential compromise of the tabulation process, highlighting some of the same things that we're highlighting today. He called them bullet ballots. He wasn't technically wrong, just, we didn't have a full picture then. So why was his warning then and the work he did then not enough to launch something? I think the problem is the same problem we're having today, where although we have more evidence now and it's becoming more approachable, right after the election, the people who could have done something about looking into our elections did not. The people who could have had recounts, the people who could have raised concerns, the people in a position of authority and power did not. And I think that's very frustrating. And it's kind of a hard thing to deal with because, you know, I'll say, right, like election integrity, it has to be bigger than, you know, any one party. It has to be bigger than yourself. And I think that's what's frustrating is the people who could have done something didn't. We don't truly know why they didn't, but could they have? I feel like there was enough warning. I feel like with the bomb threats alone, that was worth investigating. I feel like a certain candidate wrote a book about potential compromises of elections, and you know, warned about how you could pull something like this off. And I will highlight the U.S. has had problems with our elections for a while now. We're starting to figure this out as we make things more public. We're seeing problems going back to 2016, where Russian malware has been found on voting systems and voting databases in 2016, and the government knew about it, the military knew about it, but it just never really got addressed in a capacity that it should have. And I think that's very concerning. Is our democracy, our processes should be the most important thing, and why is it not getting the attention and the protection it deserves? Why is talking about elections and the way we run our elections so taboo, right? Why is it such a black box voting system? It should be open, should be free and fair. Election integrity should be important. And so I think that's something frustrating. I don't know. We don't have the answers for why the things happened the way they did. All we can do is figure out, hey, how can we go forward? How can we make sure that what is going to happen is free and fair for our elections? So,
right. And otherwise, right, Nathan, I think this is a very poignant question just to kind of end up here is because what the next election that, you know, all these numbers, this number of this year, this next year, this time almost will be 2026. And everybody's like, well, we'll wait till 2026. And so what, if we don't do anything now, if we don't shout it from the rooftops and write and contact every elected that might have some button to push or some lever to pull from the people level, from the citizen level, then we are we focusing on that, right?
It's so interesting to hear that because it's come up time and time again where people are like, oh, well, you know, they'll get them the next time, right? You know, just, oh, don't you just wait the midterms. But if we don't address the actual problem, which is, was our election conducted free and fairly? Was the results of this election correct? And were people's votes counted correctly this time around? Because if they weren't, and if the same machines are used in the midterms, how can you guarantee you'll get them in the midterms? And I feel like that's something that needs to be addressed. And so it's sad to see certain people saying, hey, you know, we'll just adapt. And the next time around, when, you know, everything we've shown you today shows there is a concern to be had with the machines today, with right now. And we don't have years. You know, we don't have long to wait. And this has to be fixed soon. This has to be made public soon.
Yes. Yes. Well, Nathan, thank you. And I want you to know from the folks here at League of Coalitions, we appreciate you coming here on our first live, our L.O.C live, because election truth, we believe, is the answer. We believe that the truth of it is, our truth is like the ultimate election truth. The reason that we named this campaign is that she won. That's the ultimate truth for us. I mean, it really is that. That's not partisan. It's a fact. So that's why we are carrying it out to the streets in this fashion. So we want you to know that we are still cheerleading, championing, but we're doing it like we want to get this voice on the street in signs. We're going to help the last.
I appreciate.
So yeah,
I appreciate you having me kind of as a guest and being able to kind of talk about these concerns. I'm sure we'll have more opportunities in the future. We'll have more data in the future. But I think what's important is, as you said, right? Let's give people the ability to exercise their rights, their civil rights. And that's what's important as well.
Yeah, so we can keep them. Right. Nathan
Well, thank you
Taylor,
very much.
co-founder, one of the 3 co-founders of electricitruth.alliance.org. We hope to have you back soon. And we're going to get the words out here on these streets loud and proud on July the 4th and moving forward. So just know that.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Thank you to everyone. We've got the last couple of minutes. We are overwhelmed with your questions, with your attention to this. I want you to know that we realize what she won means. And when you say that out loud, that it can be polarizing. But like Nathan said, it has to be louder. And we believe this is the next volume level. We have to turn the knob all the way to 10 or 100, even 1,000, because this is probably the only lever that we have left that we can try to pull and get our elected representatives elected on board. How do we do that? Well, I'm going to tell you how. The first is a toolkit of our own on how to start the She Won campaign in your locality, in your city, complete with a file of graphics. We are going to have these available as well on our website. Your vote, your belonging, your possession that so many people have fought for and died for, and that you are fighting for now. Your vote has been taken, it's been confiscated, and you have to demand it back. We have to demand it back outside